The following is a presentation of the Healthcare Facilities Network. Hello, and welcome to the Healthcare Facilities Network. I'm your host, Peter Martin, Vice President of Business Development for CREF. We are located in Boston, Massachusetts. We have offices in Dallas, Texas, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and out in Salt Lake City, Utah. And you can find us on the web at cref.com. I want to welcome my guest today, Damian Mindley, Facilities Management Executive for the VA Healthcare System. Damian's hospital is down in Atlanta, the Atlanta VA Healthcare. Damian, welcome and thank you for appearing.
How are you, Peter? Thank you very much. It's my privilege to be here. And thank you for the invite. I appreciate it.
No, my pleasure. So a couple of things just by way of intro. I have to say right off the very top, because I'm sure anybody who's tuning in, Damian, the bow tie is sharp. I love it.
Thank you very much. It's actually a necktie that I tied into a bow tie. So I like the fuller look of it.
Yeah, I do too. Now, when you tie a necktie into a bow tie, so the necktie, do you still tie it the same way and then turn it?
No, it's a little different. So even when I tie a necktie into a necktie, I have to have it in front of me, and then I form it, and then I put it around my neck. Yeah.
Really? Wait,
So
so
same thing. Yeah,
you do it out in front?
I do. Like some people do it here. I can't do that. I do that in front.
Interesting.
So with the bow tie, I put it on my counter and I'm, folding and I'm twisting, I'm turning, then I've got to get the right dimple in and, so on and so on. So it's all in front of me and then I put it on.
That is pretty awesome. I'm gonna try. So I'm one of those people who I tie it this way.
Ah,
I don't even know that I would. I'm gonna try. I don't even know that I would be able to do that. Is
yeah, that's for some reason that's how I'm wired. I've always tied my neckties just out in front of me and then put it on.
All right. So if anybody is watching this and you tie your necktie or your bow tie similarly, I want to hear it. I wonder how many people tie it that way.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well,
I think my brothers, I still have to tie their ties for them because I guess they didn't put time iron, but you know.
I have two sons. I have four kids, but I have two sons. And when I had to teach them how to tie the tie, it teaches you patience, doesn't it? Like when
Yeah,
you have to show somebody how to do it over and over again,
it does.
it's actually not a bad lesson now that I think about it. Just you just do it over and over again, and then you get it. But getting to that point, it can take a bit.
It does take time. So I prefer in a necktie the full Windsor with a dimple right below the full Windsor. So it takes time to get that right.
Yeah, that's great. So last question about the tie, and then we move. Do you always go bow, or do you sometimes go?
No. So our deputy director here at the healthcare system has instituted bow tie Thursdays. So on Thursday, I try to oblige as best as I can.
I like it. I like it. It's a nice looking tie. Very sharp. Very
Thank
sharp.
you.
You are the not only the first guest from the VA healthcare system, you're the first guest to wear a bow tie. So a double play.
All right, many first. Great.
Yeah, exactly. That's the Christmas season. I don't
Yeah,
know when to release this either pre or post, but it is the
yeah.
Christmas.
Hmm.
So I asked Damian to appear. Damian and I had worked together. Damian and I had worked together years ago, and Damian has a role that's presently open at the VA healthcare system down in Georgia. And he asked if I could put it out on my LinkedIn profile, which I did. So if you're looking for information, go to my LinkedIn profile or your website. As I was doing that, I said, "Hey, Damian, would you want to appear on the show? Because we cover all things healthcare facilities management on the Healthcare Facilities Network, but I haven't had anybody from the VA, and I had wanted to, and so I thought let's promote the role, but then talk a little bit about your career, about the VA healthcare system. I mean, as you know, because it is your career, you have a very interesting career. You've been in the private sector, the public sector, you've worked in energy, so you got a really interesting career path. But let's focus at the start on the VA, if you don't mind. If you could, Damian, tell us a little bit about what role is open
Yeah.
What are you looking for in the role? And we can go from there.
Sure. Again, thank you for the opportunity, Peter. And good evening or good afternoon, everyone. So the role that we are recruiting for is that of the Deputy Chief Engineer. Basically, that role would serve as a Chief Compliance Officer over facilities management. Compliance over what, you may ask, is environment of care, life safety, code compliance, construction safety, dealing with all the other regulatory bodies, the Georgia EPD, the EPA, OSHA, and things of that nature. Along with that responsibility, he will also have matrix responsibility over the different sections in engineering. So we're broken into maintenance, operations, we have construction, and then I have a business office. So maintenance covers basically the maintenance of the built environment of care, halls and walls, floor, tiling, ceilings, painting, so on and so on. We also have a very large fleet of over 300 vehicles that we maintain for use of the clinicians who do home-based primary care, social workers who have to go out and visit our veterans, and for other executives that have to visit our 23 sites of care within our Atlanta VA healthcare system. So we cover fleet, we cover grounds management and maintenance. And also that position covers two of our other own facilities. We have a facility in West Georgia and a facility in Fort McPherson. So that's maintenance. On the operations side, we have an associate chief of operations. That position covers our plant and utility operations. We have a full-blown boiler plant with 4 boilers for chillers, cooling towers. We've got a $40 million combined heat and power plant. So that position has a huge responsibility for managing our plant operations and utilities. We have a associate chief of planning, design, and construction. So we have our own in-house planning, design, and construction team. We've got about 9 full-time on-staff healthcare engineers. And then we've contracted with a firm to add another 10 contract engineers. So we've got a total of about 20 engineers that we utilize to manage our in-house design and construction program. Okay. Then to manage the finances of all that, we've got a business office that manages all the finances that goes with maintenance, construction, making sure that everyone gets paid, time and leave, so on and so on. So
that's very important.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So, it's interesting. We were talking a little bit before you started to record. I started to record. Titles are misleading these days, right? You kind of have to look at what the responsibilities and scope are. Right. If you're at a acute care hospital and you've worked in an acute care system before, you might see that supervisory and you think, oh, okay, it's management, but there's a couple of steps above me. But this is a role that's got a big scope with a lot of accountability attached to it, it seems.
Yeah, big scope, lots of accountability. We here in the VA take our jobs as facilities managers very seriously. Lives are attached to it, the safety of everybody that comes into the building. We are also a federal response center. So, we have to ensure that our equipment is always at the ready. I forgot to mention that we also have an on-site 750,000 gallon water tower to be able to sustain us if we were to lose water. And I've had to use it a couple of years ago for between 3 and 5 days because we lost our main water feed. So lots of responsibility. We take compliance very seriously. We want to make sure that we're maintaining the built environment of care to the best that we can.
What happened that you lost the water for that long?
So
CREF provides strategic real estate solutions that enable organizations to get the most out of their physical infrastructure. At CREF, the difference is we're not just advisors, we're operators. Our expertise in strategic asset advisory, project management, regulatory preparedness, and finding operational efficiencies allows us to provide organizations with end-to-end visibility and insight into their real estate portfolios and physical assets.
So in DeKalb County, we lost a main water broke, and so we lost all feed to the hospital. So we had to transition to our water tower. We set up the incident command, And for a couple of days, I had to be on site for a couple of days. We had to manage our water usage, patients taking showers, manage the flushing of toilets, and fortunately, we were able to manage through that process. I think we're on the tower for about 5 days. I know I was getting nervous because then the pumps that were pumping the water started cavitating. So but the water came back in online just in time. So
You're in the world of healthcare facilities management, but I was just thinking as you were talking just about losing water and managing, flushing the toilet. We're really fortunate that we don't really think about those things a lot. Right now, you have to because it's part of your job, and you never know when that's going to happen. But we take so many of these things for granted, and literally anything can go wrong.
that's true. That's true.
You
Murphy's
know,
law does happen.
exactly. And I guess that's why you plan for it, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
The fleet part isn't so 300 cars. That's quite a few, huh?
Yes, sir. The Atlanta VA healthcare system consists of about 5,200 employees, and so a large part of that are clinicians. And our mission and really healthcare model as a whole is to take the care to the patients. So, we're taking the cares out to our veteran population. And so we cover a wide swath of the Atlanta metro. And so vehicles are needed for, the clinicians to go out to see our veterans um, at many points in far, we go as far as Blairsville, Pike, and Pickens County. And Blairsville, I think the one-way drive to Blairsville is about 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, one of my sites that I manage directly in West Georgia is about an hour and a half drive. So we cover a large territory.
So do you have just you're running a hospital, which is, much more important, but I'm kind of focused on the fleet. Do you have a garage and a pretty big, parking lot? What type of an area does it take to maintain 300 vehicles?
So because we have 23 sites of care and a lot of our clinicians dispatch from their respective sites of care, we've got our vehicles spread across the healthcare system.
Okay. Okay. So, Damian, tell me a little bit. You've worked in both, you worked for SSM Health, you've worked in the private sector, you've worked for the VA. Is there a type of person or skill set or mindset that you look for the VA, or is it really this? You've worked acute care, you can work in the VA system. You worked in the VA system, you can work in the acute care. Is there commonality to it? Obviously, you're serving patients and life and death and environment of care. That's all very similar, but are there differences between the two?
Definitely. So, yes, one can work in an acute care hospital and transition easily to the VA. There is some learning as it relates to VA funding. There is some learning I feel, it's my opinion that in the environment of care world, we are very heavily oversighted. So there's lots of oversight body that we manage. So not just Joint Commission or your OSHAs or your EPAs, but we have Office of Inspector General. We have a central office that deals with the mental health patients only, and with behavioral health patients, we have to ensure that the environment of care is suitable to that population of patients. We're oversighted by another entity, and actually I just went through it yesterday, called Asalon. Asalon has taken over the surveying of long-term care facilities from Joint Commission. So I just went through that yesterday, and we did fairly well, very well actually. So we've got many bodies that we deal with. So again, the core skill sets from an acute care facility that's managed by CMS, that skill set will transition to the VA, but there's just a few differences in terms of funding and some of the oversight bodies that we have to report back to.
I was just actually talking to somebody this morning. We were talking about like how the demands have changed on directors and managers, and we were talking about finance and how now as a director or manager, you really have to be comfortable with data. You have to be able to interpret it, and you have to be able to present to your C-suite. It's kind of a different skill. Years ago, if you were strong technically, you could probably get by. But now numbers are part of it. You got to create business cases. You got to tell them why your chiller needs replacing. You were talking about kind of the funding, the monetary aspect of it. Do your directors or does your supervisor and even you, do you get more into the numbers than you might in an acute care setting? Do you have to do that more?
We have to. So even in requesting staffing resources, I've got to make the business case for why my C-suite or my ELT executive leadership team should invest in additional staffing. As it pertains to capital infrastructure, we've got to make the business case as to why should we make this massive investment into additional infrastructure. How is that going to help or improve our patient access? So everything that we need funds for, we are having to have the skill set to be able to synthesize information and to be able to communicate it in a manner that's not overly engineer-ish or overly technical, but in a manner that the executives can understand and in a way that makes them makes it easy for them to get to yes.
And are the challenges in getting to yes is similar at the VA as they are in the acute care world, not government world?
So yes, I would say so because everybody's facing financial constraints. I know some people think that the government has a deep unending pocket, but really government funding is yours and my taxpayer dollars, right?
Right.
And so we still have to be judicious in how we manage it. So although there's talk of managing finances more appropriately, we are very well supported in terms of the need for human resources, the need for capital improvement, the need for maintenance and repair. I wouldn't say the challenge, but the task for us is to make sure that we can articulate that case to the executives so that when they're signing off on a $5 million project, like I've got to rekey my facility, and that's going to be upwards of $5-6 million. I can communicate it in a way that they can say, okay, I understand, I'm tracking with you, I'm on board, approved.
Rekeying, boy, you brought up that word. It's kind of like a nightmare. How far along are you?
We're just in the beginning stages. We met with a company yesterday and reviewed their product and talked about some of the challenges that we're having with maintaining a key structure and organization across our healthcare system.
It's amazing how quickly it kind of like can spiral out of control, right? You start with this one, maybe it's just like the master key. Everybody wants the master key. I never want a master key. But it's like people who, if you don't work in it, you don't necessarily, and you shouldn't because it's not your world, but you don't appreciate how it's like signage, right? It's like directional signage. Once you start with that, you're like, oh, wow, all of these little nuances, nothing's ever as easy as you think it's going,
there is really a very unique science to keying a facility and security. Yeah. And like you said, people don't really appreciate it, but boy, a lot goes into physical security.
Yeah.
And signage for that matter.
And especially these days where, safety and security is so important. And let's face it, I mean, a lot of times people like to blame. You almost got to make sure, and you just got to make sure you do the best you can so that nothing like that happens. And you're,
right, exactly.
You're coming at it from, I want to keep my patients in my facility safe.
Exactly.
How long is the keying project supposed to take?
So my best guess right now is maybe 2.5 years, and part of that is the procurement process. The government procurement process is somewhat lengthy because we have to go through the appropriate checks and balances because we are using government funds to award a pretty sizable contract. So we've got to make sure that we're doing our due diligence in how we disperse those funds.
I didn't ask you. You talked a little bit about your footprint offsite. How big is the Atlanta VA hospital?
So the main hospital is roughly 1.2 million square feet. And then throughout the healthcare system, we have down the street, I've got an 85,000 square feet clinic. In Cobb County, which is probably our newest facility, we've got about a 60,000 square foot healthcare center. Our typical community-based outpatient clinics range from 8 to 10,000 square feet. My site out at Fort McPherson is roughly 150, 200,000 square feet. And my site out in West Georgia is roughly about, I would say, about 100,000 square feet.
You're not bored.
No, not at all. It's an adventure every day, every day.
Damian, is there something about working within the VA system that a person like me, a person who has not worked in the system, maybe wouldn't know or would be interesting to know from your experiences?
What's interesting about the VA system is that, again, we serve what I think is a very set apart and set aside clientele, which is our nation's heroes, veterans. And there is a camaraderie amongst our veterans. Even amongst my facility management staff members, I've got many veterans that are within my staffing pool. So I've got veterans serving veterans. So we have a very noble mission. Yeah. And the mission is to build and maintain a healing and therapeutic environment of care for our nation's heroes. So we're very veteran / patient centric in how we approach everything that we do. Part of that, my why, I guess, is when I came into the VA is that I came in under the Honorable Anthony J. Principi. And part of my onboarding, he had this video vignette. And the theme of the vignette was, it's my turn to serve. And in summary, he's saying that, oh, okay, well, these veterans, our nation's heroes, they spent time in the war front and they served our country. Now, as civilians, it's your turn to serve and do the best for our nation's heroes. So the unique thing about working in the VA is that it's a very noble and focused mission, and that's on being patient-centric and veteran-centric.
So you guys are very cognizant of you're very cognizant of your patients and your guests and the group which you serve.
Very much so. Even in our interior finishes, there is war memorabilia. There are things that are very veteran facing within the hospital, and is paying homage to the different wars that we've had and the different historical significance of some of the war theaters that we've been in. So yes, it's very veteran centric.
I didn't know that. Obviously, I would, and that's pretty cool that's a focus.
We want our clientele, which is our nation's heroes, to feel respected, right? When they come through the doors of our facility, we're here to serve them. They've done their time, and so they deserve their best, and they deserve our utmost attention and respect, and they deserve to be treated like our nation's heroes.
Is your census, are you guys typically pretty well packed?
So recently, we have just become the fastest growing and the largest VA healthcare system in the country.
Wow.
Yeah, so we are one of 157 hospitals across the VA network, and we are the largest in terms of patient population and growth.
How much do you know how much you grew by? Is that like a year-to-year metric? How much growth did you experience?
So it is a year-to-year metric, and I'm not clear on. I don't remember the exact number, but that's okay. I know we just met that metric.
Well, everybody's going south, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
That was another. I was talking to somebody else about that. I think, and I used to say this when I was doing more of the recruiting, but I could count on two hands, maybe one hand, the number of people over the years who told me I want to go north. Right. Everybody wants to go south. I know that, finding talent, recruiting is difficult. across healthcare today. It's very difficult in the acute care world. Do you guys have the same challenges, or maybe is it maybe a little bit easier because of your clientele and who you're serving, or do you guys have the same challenges filling positions as everybody else?
So, so the healthcare facilities management profession is a very niche profession. So yes, it's we have the same challenges. However, the VA has taken a unique approach to that challenge, and I'm a product of the VA's approach. I came into the VA through a program called the Technical Career Field Program, and the program is
Technical career field program?
Technical Career Field Program. And again, I didn't know anything about VA or healthcare engineering, but they grabbed me out of school and they put me into a 2-year program where I was trained to be a facilities management executive. So back in 2003, August, when I first came into the VA, I was hired by the VA Maryland Healthcare System, and I was assigned to 2 very senior engineers, Mr. Richard Iafola and another individual named Ed Littman, who's currently still with the VA. He's the VA head engineer. And so I trained under their tutelage for the first 2 years of my career. Then I transitioned here to Atlanta and continued my training under seasoned engineers. And so that year, there was about 30 of us degree engineers that came in through that program. And I still keep in touch with some of those colleagues to this day. So that's been the VA's approach to meeting that requirement or overcoming finding talent is by growing their own internal talent.
That's the way you got to do it these days, right? It's the only way. So you were an electrical and computer engineer.
Yes, sir.
When they approached you about the career, what did you like? What were you thinking? Were you like, what is this field? What, like, how much convincing did it take? And I have to imagine, and I've seen this and I've heard this, that sometimes in healthcare, you're an engineer, you might be able to get more money somewhere else. I mean, healthcare doesn't pay at the top, right? It just doesn't. I mean, it can, but yet there's other things that keep you in your career. But as a younger kid, right, you're in college, we all want to make the most money possible. We're not necessarily thinking altruistically or long term. Was it tough to convince you to join, or what was your thought process, if you can remember?
So, graduating from engineering school with an electrical and computer engineering degree, I thought that my track was going to be working at Lockheed Martin, Boeing, or Northrop Grumman, as a test engineer, analyzing circuits and doing piece-price analysis and so on and so on. When I got the call for the interview, I wasn't sure what to expect. So I said, this was in August. I graduated in May. I had been looking, and not a lot was being offered then, and the economy was still sort of kind of recovering still from 9/11.
Yeah.
So I got the call. I went to the interview not knowing what to expect, and I seemed to have answered the questions well enough from a, I guess, engineering fundamentals perspective to get called back. Now, I had 2 offers, one from the VA and one from the Air Force. But the Air Force offer, I had to move. And the VA, I remember specifically, I think my salary back then was $43,000 $43,500. I'm like, I mean, at the time, the going rate was like $52,000 to $60,000. I'm like, So anyway, I went and I said, okay, well, I'm going to walk in the door, and after 2 years, I'm going to leave. So got hired. I showed up, and I think my first or second week, they sent me to Joint Commission training. But as a young engineer, that just all went over my head because I had no perspective, no frame of reference. But as I began to get my foot steady and start to get a hold of the vision of Secretary Principi, and I got exposed to more, I started to, first of all, I love the mission. And then the healthcare engineering field is a combination of really all the engineering disciplines: electrical, mechanical, civil, structural. And so it was a unique opportunity to learn about all the disciplines and how they work together to maintain and build the healthcare environment of care. And the uniqueness of it, having that unique skill set also intrigued me. So I really got into my books. I studied. I went to ASHI conferences. I got certain credentials, and it all started to make sense to me. and I've been with it since.
When you look at the, I'm not an old guy. This is like an old person question, but you were talking about kind of like the engineering background and how the mechanical, the electrical, all of those kind of get rolled into this one, one position. Do you, as you look to the future, are you concerned that we're losing that skill set or that we're just not producing as many folks? I mean, because what you guys, not everybody can run a hospital, right? I mean, it's a very specific skill. Does that worry you at all, or do you not? You're just engrossed kind of the day to day and doing what
No,
you're doing.
it does worry me. So I was at a conference a few years ago in Orlando. It was a Joint Commission training conference, and I think they were worried about it as well. So they asked the question: how many engineers in here have 2 years or less of experience? Now, I'm in a room of about, I'm going to say 200 to 250 folks, and the majority of the room raised their hands.
Yeah.
I said, wow, that is very concerning.
Yeah.
That, first of all, there's a huge, lots of the seasoned engineers are at retirement eligible age and they're going. And
Yeah.
so, what's left is some of the younger guys who are trying to learn. Um, and if you don't have that self-direction or that intellectual curiosity, then you sort of kind of muddle through it. But for me, healthcare engineering is not something to muddle through because it's very serious and people's lives are literally at stake based on what we do and the decisions that we make. So yes, I am worried about the succession planning, and I also see it in the recruiting. Even when I get some applications, I don't get a lot of individuals with healthcare engineering experience, but just very few, and really the quality of the experience is also concerning as well. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's definitely an issue. We could do a whole topic on that, but we'll, you talked about the unique mission of a VA hospital. I always like to ask folks who appear, I always like to personalize it because again, a lot of people don't necessarily know what facilities management does. They kind of think of a building, but you guys are interacting directly with patients, their families. I mean, there's a human element to what you do. Is there a story or two that sticks out to you from like patient interactions or interactions you've had at the VA with a patient or with their family? Anything that sticks in your mind?
yeah, but many years ago, there was a council here at the medical center, and back then we had an on-site long-term care facility. And I forget the actual formal name of the council, but the council was made up of patients. And I had to go to this council on a, I think, bi-monthly basis to hear the concerns, the environment of care concerns of the patients. My room is too cold, or my flooring is not in the best condition, or it's noisy, or the air conditioning unit is noisy. So one of the constituents was actually a former facilities manager as a patient, very well dressed individual, and not only would he practically voice his concern, and I would work my best to meet whatever his concerns were, but he also took the time to give me advice. I became the chief engineer in 2012, and so I was about 31.
Wow.
Um,
Nice.
so yeah, very young. So he saw that although I had lots of knowledge, he saw that I could benefit from that mentor mentee coaching. And so even in my working to address his needs, he always would also pour back into me and say, "Young man, if I were you, I would do it this way based on my years of experience." And so that was very memorable for me.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Hmm.
That is a young age to get to that
Yes,
position.
yes,
Just we talked a little bit about titles. That was interesting to me. So, like, chief engineer, would that be equivalent like to a director of FM title in the
yes,
acute care world?
yes.
So your title is facilities management executive. What's the equivalent in an acute care environment to that title?
So chief engineer, facilities management executive, director of FM. I would say um, I'm comparing it to, so director of FM, and one hospital comes to mind. That director of FM position was sort of kind of smaller scale than my position. So I would say, okay, VP of facilities.
Okay.
That's what it is.
Okay.
So the chief engineer would be equivalent to a VP of facilities in the private sector.
Titles are always fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I think it's why you just kind of have to look at what people do as opposed to what their title is. You know, 'cause everybody loves the title, but what do you do?
Right.
So you talked about kind of your past career, an engineer, you were an engineer, you go into the healthcare system, you've worked in energy, but I also know that you like to manage through change. You like change management and all. And that's obviously a skill that's needed these days more than ever because everything's changing. From a
Oh, yeah.
change management perspective, though, and your management of change, what do you find works and how do you keep people with you with all the change we have going on, especially in healthcare?
Yeah, that's a great question, Peter. I always say that I'm useless without my team.
Hmm.
I've adopted this principle from John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And in that book, he says, before you ask your team for a helping hand, you want to make sure that you inspire them in their hearts first, and then they will voluntarily give you a helping hand. So my process for change management, again, is first and foremost try to inspire my team members. And the way I do that is I'm transparent. I have my monthly staff meetings, and I want to make sure that that's a time where I'm sharing value added information and not just a time to pass the time. I take the time to prepare a PowerPoint presentation because I want to be effective in what I'm presenting so that they understand. So in managing change, I want to make sure that not only am I visually showing you change, but I'm communicating the change. And during the change, I am managing through that change, not just talking about it, but I'm leading through the change by constant communicating and over communicating, correcting, and doing things of that nature. So my method for change management is first and foremost clearly communicating the change, being transparent, ensuring that they understand the change, and inspiring them to understand, well, this is why we're changing, and it's for the better. And after communicating that, just leading them through the change. Change is not easy for anybody, right? But if I demonstrate leadership in action by leading my staff through the change, then I found that they're more apt to follow me. Not just that though, but I'm also inspecting what I expect. So even though I'm communicating and I'm leading through the change, now I'm going on site, I'm visiting my different sites, and I'm inspecting what I'm expecting. And what I found with that is the inspired individuals are very proud to say, "Hey, Chief, look at what I'm doing," and they want to explain to you. They want to show you, "See, Chief, I'm following," so on and so on. And so I've adopted that to be really hands-on and let people know that I think what you're doing is very important. Let me see. Tell me more about it. And boy, they open up and they just start going on, and they feel very proud about what they're doing. So I found that to be very effective.
As you were is there, and I'm putting you out, well, you've managed a lot of change. I'm thinking back just to a specific example, and I'm wondering if you have kind of like an aha example. I remember we were working with an organization, and so this is 5 or 6 years ago, and it's when kind of iPads and work order management and iPads going out still somewhat new, right? And the director I was working with was talking to me about that. And he had an older staff, and facilities folks aren't necessarily the most adaptive to change. They've done things paper. You got the work order, you go out, you use your pen, et cetera, et cetera. And he was trying to manage through change, and he was just telling me that he had one gentleman who was very resistant to it and just wouldn't change. And finally, the director brought him aside and said, how can I help you? And the guy's like, I can't type. I've never used a keyboard before. And for the director, that was kind of like an aha moment, right? Because you never know why people are resistant to change unless you talk to them, kind of like you said, communicating. Do you have, maybe not that example, but do you have from like your change management, like an aha where you learn something from an employee that you may not have known unless you asked the question, how can I help?
That's a very good point. So in managing the many change that I've had to manage through, um, I had an individual that had been working on a system, managing work orders in a system that's mumps based. So that's 70s based technology, and that's what they were most comfortable in. Uh,
How long ago was this that they were using 70s based technology?
well, this was not that long ago. It was about 9 to 10 years ago.
Okay.
so
Going
so
back from if you're 31 and you're the chief engineer in 2011, I'm like, well, it can't be that long ago, right?
right. So me being, the new young chief, I said, we're going to go to this new modern based system, and this is what we're going to do. And so it was a web-based computer-aided facilities management software. Um, I, the name just popped in my head, and I almost said it, but I'm not going to say it. It was a web-based system, and I'm marching on, and I'm getting my plans together, and I'm going to communicate this, and this is what we're going to go to. And this individual, who was very seasoned, by the way, was very resistant to change, to change into the software, even though it had all the bells and whistles. You could do data extrapolation and so on and so on. And then I said, I talked to myself. I said, sir, why are you so resistant to this change? He says, Mindley, do you understand that my mumps based system is tied into the space management software, which is tied into the medical equipment management location system, and so on and so on. I said, wow, I had no idea. Here I am thinking work orders are just work orders, but not that there are multiple layers that goes into managing the work order process. And so that for me was a huge aha moment and really saved me a lot of heartache and pain and headache, because had I jumped to that system, I would have been in some deep trouble. So that was a huge aha moment for me.
I think it's what makes the job difficult, rewarding, challenging, is that everything is tied. Literally everything is probably tied to something else, right? There's not, it's like the employment issue where you can't just solve for one thing, because often it's more than one thing that goes into just one thing, right?
Exactly.
So what did you finally get rid of the 70s based work order system?
So yes, so the VA, yes. So we did finally move from that mumps based system to Maximo, but it incorporated the space file system, the medical equipment inventory, the utility management inventory. So it was a comprehensive change, not just a myopic focus on work orders.
That's a big that is though a big change. I mean,
Oh yeah, huge.
yeah, and nothing happens simply. Now, you you worked for a bit in the energy realm, right? In the energy world. Like how do you how do you view energy, like with sustainability, with the focus on sustainability, with the focus on energy reduction? What do you take, or what lessons do you take from that role, from that work that you did for a couple of years? How do you bring that into the VA, and how do we're talking about change. How can you try to affect change based on that experience you had?
So hospitals are the most energy intensive or energy use facilities that there are, right? Multifaceted. You need energy for everything.
Yeah.
Part of my role is to reduce the cost of running the facility. So we're using unique procurement tools now. One is a utility energy savings performance contract that we're embarking on to bring our combined heat and power plant online. That combined heat and power plant is estimated to save us about $2 million per annum in terms of energy savings. So we're working towards that. The more money that I can save in operating costs is the more money that goes back to veterans care, right? So that's the driver for energy management. But I take that skill sets in the energy industry and try to look for opportunities within the healthcare sector. Again, we run so much cooling towers, chillers. We've got pumps running all the time, huge air handlers that are pulling all kinds of energy. So and lighting, massive lighting all over the facility. So I take that skill set to look for opportunities to see where we can reduce energy usage, but also maintain the environment of care to the standard that the clinicians and visitors expect. And so far, it's been very helpful. We've gone, like I said, we're going through a UVSC, and we've also gone through a few ESPCs where we've changed out our lighting to LED lighting. We've changed out our transformers to green transformers, and we're still yet looking for more energy conservation measures to reduce our energy footprint.
When you make changes, you're part of a system. Obviously, you're part of a large system, but do you have autonomy to be able to do that within your sphere of influence within the Atlanta VA, or do you have to, like, does that have to get approved elsewhere, implemented elsewhere, or are you autonomous to be able to act to do things like that?
So for UESCs and ESPs, no, I'm not. So we have a national office.
Okay.
Their acronyms are PCAC, Program Contracting Activity Center.
You must have a lot of acronyms to keep track of, huh?
Lots of acronyms. So they are a central contracting office that manages all of our energy savings performance contracts and USCs nationwide, right? So I go through that office because they have the expertise as it relates to financing and dealing with some of these big companies and bringing that skill set and talent on the board. So I don't have autonomy per se because I need their assistance in navigating that industry.
Interesting. So as you look out, and I'm speaking to Damian Mindley. Damian is facilities management executive for the Atlanta VA healthcare system. As you look out, the next 5 years, the next 10 years or so, what do you see for this field? Where do you think hospitals and where do you think the field is going?
Major advancements in high-tech, high-cost medical devices for diagnostic and therapeutic care. The model of care is changing. I don't believe that entities are going to be building large mega hospitals anymore, but more so taking the care to the community. COVID, even though the VA, I feel, has been ahead of this curve, COVID has exponentially grown telehealth. So, but with the VA, the VA has been doing telehealth pre-COVID. We were doing tele-ICU, telederm, telemental health. But telehealth has exploded and will continue to explode. They're building smaller, more energy efficient hospitals. Again, the cost of healthcare is skyrocketing. So, we're looking for ways to be more financially prudent and still perform a high level of care. The healthcare facility management professional is going to have to be, have a wider breadth of competency. You've got the rise of AI. You've got medical devices that are interconnected via IT networks. So the skill sets that are going to be needed in those areas of expertise are going to be required of the healthcare facility management professional.
I'm glad you brought that up because, when you talked about the medical devices, it just triggered, AI popped into my head, and you just mentioned it. Mm-hmm. Are you guys doing a lot with, not a lot because that's not quantifiable, but has AI impacted what you do? What's been AI implementation? What do you see for that?
So right now, as the government, we have not fully immersed into AI yet. So the government hasn't fully immersed into AI yet, but I feel that it's coming. I feel that in the future is definitely coming. But even when I was in the private sector, working at SSM, they didn't allow us to access AI at that point either. So I'm not sure why that was fully. I know for the government, sometimes we like to analyze and make sure it's apropos first. But even in the private sector, there was a caution about jumping into AI, and I wasn't able to access AI from the private sector either. So
interesting. We're coming up towards the end. I want to ask you two other questions.
Sure.
If you don't mind. This may be a dumb question, but I just think you serve veterans, and veterans come in all ages, right? I mean, you can join the military 18 all the way up. But your patient mix, Does it skew older side as opposed to the younger? Is it not biased? Is it weighted towards one age group more than the other? Or I don't know why I'm asking. I'm just thinking of that. Like, what's your patient demographic, like average age? Are they older folks or are they like a regular hospital? You get people of all ages.
So we get people of all ages, but I would say that the data is skewed towards the older generation. But I've seen a large swath. I doing rounds and talking to patients. I see young men who had just enlisted and acquired some injury, up to the more seasoned and older ones who had served in previous war theaters. So I would say that it skews towards the older patient population. Part of maintaining the built environment of care, we keep in mind the older patient population, ADA, ABOS, ADAAG, and so forth and so on. We're very cognizant in that we have an older patient population, so we want to make sure that the built environment is such that they can uh, negotiate it safely.
Mm, yeah. So last question, Damian Mindley, and if people are interested in your supervisory healthcare engineer opportunity, I know they can find it on your LinkedIn page. It's on my LinkedIn page if you scroll, and you can find it at the VA. Just for somebody who's considering the opportunity, what would you say to them to encourage them to apply?
The VA is a very great organization to work for. Um, I'll tell you, it's there's such a camaraderie within the VA healthcare system. So at my level, I'm the facility manager for a healthcare system, but also at a regional level, there are a team of engineers that supports us, and they cover Georgia, South Carolina, so Augusta, Georgia, sorry, Georgia, and South Carolina. Um, and then at the national level, we have another team of engineers that supports us as well. So there's a collective of engineers that we put together our collective talents and we adopt best practices from across the region. Every month, I'm on a call with uh, hundreds of engineers from across the country, and it's our national compliance call to ensure that we're all on the same page as it relates to joint commission compliance, or if there's something that came up at a hospital, hey engineers, be on the lookout for this. That's number one. Number two, the training and growth opportunities within the VA healthcare system is incredible. Like I said, my own journey starting from, and so, well, let me say this. In the government, you have these pay scales. So, the general schedule starts from a GS1 to a GS15. So, because I had a degree, I came in at a GS5. But just to let you know, I went from a GS5 to a GS14, right? So, the growth potential is immense within the VA system. Um, and even above the GS15 level, with enough years of experience, you can also work to get to the executive level. And so the VA also offers that. They offer training institutes, the Healthcare Leadership Development Institute. I myself went through an executive training program that was sponsored by the Partnership for Public Service. It was called Excellence in Government. And I had the opportunity to train at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I traveled to one of the large Jesuit school foundations to learn about leadership, data analysis, so forth and so on. I traveled to some of the historical war sites to learn the history of war and what happened there from a leadership perspective.
Well, that's
I
awesome.
went to, yeah, part of that program was I went to a play that displayed historical dialogue between Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, right?
Wow.
So when the VA trains us, they train us to be well-rounded leaders, not just from a technical aspect, but from a servant leadership aspect. Leading people, and so the VA offers all that. For this for the specific job that I'm recruiting for, I think the salary is very competitive. But on top of that, we're offering a recruitment incentive, and the VA will come in and actually relocate you. So the VA will send a move. The VA will hire a moving company, send them to your house. The movers will pack your house up,
Wow.
transition you to the next state, put you up in temporary quarters. So the VA has invested a lot to bring in the best and the brightest talent. So now is a great time, as good a time as any, to get plugged in into the VA and watch your career just skyrocket.
That is a great advertisement. I was gonna say, I'm not smart, I'm not an engineer, and I can't do math, but I'm applying. I can talk. You know that I love history, and that sounds awesome to be able to go to a site. And you talk about the Lincoln and Douglas. There's a book about that relationship,
Yes,
which is
yes,
fascinating.
yes.
I've read it before. It's very interesting, and it made me think too. I'm not a poet person, but like Walt Whitman was of that time, and
Mhm.
Walt Whitman used to watch Lincoln's carriage go by, and he'd watch him for. It's interesting, you tie all these people we hear about kind of together, and then you learn kind of what it was like and the relationships they
Right.
had and the roads that they traveled. It's just very interesting. That's a great way to learn to do.
Yeah, it was. It
I'm
was.
jealous of that.
Yeah, hands on. So, like I said, the VA is very interested in training its future leaders. Very invested, and they put their money where their mouth is. So, I'm glad to be back in the VA system. I feel like it's where I belong. I'm being very supported by my leadership team.
Yep.
Got a very strong and stable leadership team. They're supporting me in terms of human resources, capital improvements, maintenance and repair, and so on and so on. So it's a great time to be a VA healthcare facility manager.
And as you know, if your footprint there, as you said, is continuing to grow
Oh
and
yes.
continue to expand, you're just going to need you're going to need more.
As a matter of fact, gotta put this major plug. We are now on the map for what they call a major planning and feasibility study for a brand new healthcare facility.
How
Not
old how old is that one that you're in
the
now?
main campus was built in 1965.
Oh wow. Okay.
So not many facility engineers have the opportunity to build a hospital from the ground up. So this is a unique and great time.
What's the time? Have they established even conceptual dates for that, or are you just at the very beginning?
Just at the very beginning.
That's
Just at
great.
the very
Yeah.
yeah.
I always said those projects where you're there from the ground floor, from the concept through the opening. You're right. You don't get many opportunities like that.
Nope, not at all. Not at all. So it's a great time.
My guest, Damian Mindley, it has been fantastic to talk to you today.
Thank you, Peter. It's been my pleasure and my honor, and thank you for allowing me this time.
My pleasure. So this is Peter Martin from the Healthcare Facilities Network and Breath. If you want the job, go apply. You did a great job. Move to Atlanta. Have a great night, Damian. Thank you. And thank you always for watching the Healthcare Facilities Network.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.